Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode from your podcast, Land Talks. Today, we have a very interesting guest, Anthony Vieira, Senator, Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Anthony, on board.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. So, Anthony, let me ask you, how can legislation be a powerful tool in addressing land degradation and promoting land restoration efforts in Trinidad and Tobago and beyond?
Thank you. Well, law is like salt. It's in everything.
Of course.
Legislation will play a crucial role in land restoration because it will provide a legal framework, policies, and enforcement mechanisms to ensure effective restoration practices. So, some of the key roles I think legislation would play in land restoration would be, firstly, the establishment of legal mandates. Laws would define the rights and responsibilities of landowners, governments, and other stakeholders. They would mandate specific restoration activities such as reforestation, soil conservation, wetland rehabilitation. We could use laws to set restoration goals. So legislation could set measurable targets for land restoration. For example, that you would have to restore a specific percentage of degraded land by a certain date. You would want your laws to align with national goals, with international commitments, such as the Bonn Challenge or the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And of course, when you have agencies like the Environmental Management Authority, that is a regulator, the laws can be used to provide regulatory standards. So things like getting EIAs, noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution. These standards would ensure that restoration projects meet ecological, economic, and social goals. So the regulator would be the balancer. And of course, how you allocate resources is also a very important thing. So you can make provisions for funding. In our country, we have a green fund that was established by Parliament, which companies pay a percentage into. And then the green fund is intended for those who are involved in ecological projects. So that is one of the things. You can create incentives, tax benefits, for example, for eco-entrepreneurs, for landowners, for farmers, those who are engaged in restoration. The laws can work in terms of enforcement. So the polluter pays principle. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have an environmental commission, which is actually a superior court of record for protection of the environment. So I don't think that we are using that mechanism as efficiently as we should, but because it shouldn't only be about punishing, but making people who do degradation restore the land, for example. And of course, the laws can facilitate stakeholder collaboration, encourage partnerships, licensing agreements with companies that are doing useful projects with green mechanisms like restoration, using seaweed, the sargassum seaweed, to use it for a positive purpose, whether it is for fertilizer, that sort of thing. So I think the law is a useful mechanism for engendering better participatory approaches and ensuring that communities get to participate in decision making. That is, in our part of the world, we have the Escazú Agreement.
Yes.
One of the parts of the Escazú Agreement that is so important is the requirement for community participation on environmental impacts for them. We don't have a proper land use plan in Trinidad and Tobago. Our land use plan is actually over 60 years old. And so the law should be used to promote sustainable land use instead of unchecked quarrying and development. And of course, monitoring and accountability, very important in terms of the law. So I could go on forever. I don't want to prattle.
That was very useful. Thank you so much. So, Senator Vieira, what are the main challenges legislators face in creating and enforcing policies aimed at combating land degradation especially in small islands states like Trinidad and Tobago?
Right. Well, the first thing I would want to say is there seems to be a lack of political will. We have Trinidad and Tobago was one of the first countries to sign the Escazú Agreement. We haven't ratified it. Trinidad and Tobago is an oil and gas economy, and we are still deeply wedded to oil and gas as the means of earning income. Now, oil and gas carries all kinds of connotations. You have leakages with pollution, you have a lopsided economy because other sectors can't compete with that sector in terms of bringing in money. And so trying to get the conversation changed to one from oil and gas to a sustainable development, to a green economy, to the blue economy, that's a challenge. And as a parliamentarian, I can use my voice to raise public awareness. I can also try to, when I sit on oversight committees, use my presence there to ask those who appear before me, what are you doing in terms of environmental protection? What are you doing in terms of land degradation and becoming more responsible? I can also bring petitions and motions to the parliament that could be helpful.
Yes.
But I think when it comes to implementing land laws, even though we have on paper, we have an excellent environmental regime with laws and regulations. We have an environmental court, but all underutilized. When it comes to restoration, implementation, there's a big gap between those in the private sector and the NGOs that want to do things, and getting the government to connect with them and work in partnership. We don't have proper frameworks for that. So lots of obstacles and challenges arising from the political, the economic, the social, and technical factors as well. So I would say weak enforcement and governance, lack of capacity, conflicting jurisdictions, lack of awareness and stakeholder engagement. These are some of the challenges and barriers I see.
I understand. Thank you so much. So moving to integrating restoration into national development. How can land restoration be integrated into broader national development plans to ensure economic growth while protecting ecosystems?
Well, I think we need to, first of all, redefine our relationship with nature, right? We live in a world where everything is commoditized and it's all about shareholder value, and we take nature for granted. But I come from a small island and land is limited. And so we need to really, in terms of national development, imagine forward as to what would be the best use of our land. How can we provide food for food security while at the same time ensuring that our indigenous animal populations, our forests, our wetlands and savannas are preserved.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
How to make that balance. So our national development plans, I think, have to emphasize sustainable practices, minimize pollution and waste. We have to heighten conservation and learn how to protect our natural habitats, how to protect our endangered species, and biodiversity. You know, we really need to understand how critical it is. And this has to, the National Development Plan has to involve public awareness and education about environmental issues and the importance of biodiversity.
Okay, well noted. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about global inspiration and collaboration. Are there specific global examples or collaborative efforts that have inspired legislative action in Trinidad and Tobago to combat land degradation? What lessons can we learn from them?
Well, I think there are lessons to learn. I am particularly interested in Singapore and how Singapore have transitioned from what was once an island that was very heavily populated with concrete to now becoming a green city and a smart city and making use of solar and wind energy. I think that's an excellent example of how we should go forward. I think Denmark also provides an excellent example in how they have dealt with their pollution and how they have moved away from this heavy reliance on cars towards using bicycles, towards having livable cities. And I think we are at a very important inflection point. Do we go the route of the same old with cars and traffic and,
Yeah.
car parks and destruction of our green spaces? Or do we step back and recalibrate to becoming spaces where we live with nature in harmony, where you have the plants, the birds, the animals? I know it sounds like I'm a tree hugger, and I am, but I think it's also important. We are growing up a lot of young people that have absolutely no connection with nature. That cannot be good. We have allowed our companies to run rampant with unchecked capitalism. I think that's the real tension in the world today.
Yes.
How do we make the corporate capitalist see that you can have all the best shareholder value, but it's of no worth to you if your environment is barren? You can't drink oil. We need to really create a sense of awareness and a reconnection with nature, I think.
Great. So, in your experience, what is the one consistent outcome of land restoration? I mean, what is the one thing you can confidently say will happen when land is restored?
Well, in the Caribbean, from where I come, we depend on tourism. A lot of Barbados, Grenada.
Yeah.
When they restore land or they preserve land, one immediate benefit is ecotourism. But I think it's about quality of life. When I talk about land restoration and increasing biodiversity, I'm talking about clean air, drinkable water
Yes.
that is not going to be abused, that will be there when you need it. About living in healthy spaces, I think that there are models that we could look at. As I said, Singapore, Denmark. Of course, you have to adapt to your own culture.
Of course.
But we need to revisit. I think a lot of our countries have just developed without too much thought. We have not really reimagined. We haven't really prepared it. We didn't foresee. I think we need to step back, foresee, forestall, and create a better environment for ourselves and for our future generations.
Let's be hopeful about this. I want this conversation to carry on forever, but unfortunately, we have come to the end of the episode. It was such an honor to have you with us today, Senator Vieira. Thank you so much for giving us the chance to chat and talk with you. And for our dear audience, stay tuned for more episodes from Land Talks. Thank you so much. Goodbye.